During a heated exchange, one of the most disagreeable things is to get shut down by somebody who is attacking you specifically instead of attacking your argument. In modern debates, this commonly refers to as ad hominem or ad personam attacks. Both of them are logical fallacies where an entire person is attacked instead of addressing the argument itself that they made. Ad hominem is broader and can include general attacks on character, on your motives, on your credibility, while ad personam is a direct personal insult directly aimed at humiliating or dismissing you. For example, if you were to say we should raise taxes on the wealthy to support social programs, and somebody is trying to shut you down by saying, oh, you're just a broke socialist who hates successful people. Or if you say, for instance, renewable energy is the future and we should invest in it, and the person might say to you, coming from someone who failed physics in college, I wouldn't take your opinion seriously. With those nice and grateful and happy and positive examples alone, I have the intuition you can already think of somebody in your entourage or somebody you had a conversation with in the last 12 months or even 6 months about politics or anything else with whom it happened, because that person has been trying to attack you directly instead of arguing with you in a smart and polite way. And I had a conversation with Peter Duke from the Duke Report a few months ago, who talked about this problem in conversation he was having in his life, and he called that a thought-terminating cliche, which can also be called a pattern interrupt. You may call that in any way you want, but he phrased that in a very interesting way, and I wanted to address his point in more detail here.
And a thought-terminating cliche is a phrase or an expression that ends thinking. So, I guess the best example I probably could give off the top of my head is that if you support Donald Trump, that must mean that you're a racist.
Okay.
And so that ends the conversation, because you're not qualified, or you're whatever your ideas or your thoughts or your feelings are about a situation, they're invalid because this thought-terminating cliche has been applied to you. And that usually winds up becoming a showstopper. I know that I was having a conversation, a rather heated conversation with somebody somebody who was trying to mitigate an argument that I was having with another person. And the person I was talking to said, well, it takes two to tango. And it stopped me, like my brain froze. At that point, because it was like, what you've done is you've eliminated my ability to have a rational discussion about the argument that we're having on its merits, and you kind of put it into this category where the arguments on both sides are equal because you said so. Or I didn't know how to reframe it at that point because I froze.
So first of all, Peter and anyone who recognized themselves in that kind of situation, those types of examples, if you don't know how to respond, if your brain is freezing, it is basically because of fear. Because your brain got into some fight or flight response mode due to fear, and therefore you lost momentarily your ability to think properly. Therefore, before going into conversational and linguistic and semantic techniques to get out of those situations, I would like to point out that there is a slight bit of inner issues to unveil. Basically, what are you scared of about the person you are interacting with, or about the topic you are arguing about? What is the worst thing that could happen if they ended up being right and you would be wrong? Then what? Then what is the worst thing that could happen? Because out of those two examples that Peter mentioned, so you support Donald Trump, which means you're a racist, or, well, it takes two to tango, both of those declarations could be things you can reframe very easily if they were not emotionally loaded. On the semantic structure, those things are not complex to argue against. But if they are heavily loaded for you because something happened in your life or something is really difficult to talk about related with those topics in the conversation, then it is not really the words themselves, it is what fear are they appealing to inside yourself. So once this is clear, once you know what you are really playing in that conversation, it is probably not about Trump or about Harris or about Biden or any politician, it is probably about something in yourself. And once you have clarified this, then you can get back your mental clarity and respond properly. Once this is clear, the linguistic techniques that can allow you to get out of those uncomfortable attacks is either by using specifics or the meta frame. We are going to unveil both of them one step at a time. If you want all the best strategies you can use in a debate, in a heated conversation, you can find down below a document summarizing the 7 best counter-attacks, counter-rebuttals I have found over the years to defend myself whenever I had to defend myself. And you will have examples with the explanations of why the frames work so well when you phrase what you want to say in this way or that way. That is down below if you want to check that out. To come back to the topic of thought-terminating cliche or any kind of pattern interrupt or ad hominem attack, specifics is anytime you ask for clarification about details, about numbers, facts, persons, stats, anything they have used implicitly to justify their logic works, but when you get into the facts, therefore, their logic might not work as much. For example, Charlie Kirk is using that a lot in many of his debates.
You create a company that's like close to being a fascist, and then like...
Okay. How am I...
Sorry.
Let's go through this. How am I a fascist?
Dude, like
Can you name one thing I believe that's fascist?
you believe that like you are... Oh, shit.
Then the next technique, therefore, is the meta frame that I have found to be extremely useful too. The meta frame is any moment where you are going to comment on their behavior by challenging the authority they presume having over you in that instance. If they call you a name, if they insult you, that means somewhere in their mind they presuppose having some higher authority over you. And they presuppose whatever they say is more relevant and important than anything you might ever have to say. How do they come to that conclusion? How do they know they are so superior compared to you? You can challenge that and point out how irrelevant their statement or question or attack truly is by showing they are no one, nobody to claim anything about you.
I was wondering if you find it difficult for celebrities to talk about their sexuality.
I don't find it difficult for celebrities to talk about their sexuality. Are you asking me about my sexuality?
Sure.
Why?
Why?
Thank you.
Okay.
So both the specifics technique and the meta-frame technique from the magical linguistics model can be used. With the first statement, attack, explained by Peter Duke, you support Donald Trump, which means you are a racist. I would challenge that more with the meta-frame technique, asking something, for example, like, what authority do you think you have to judge political matters so quickly, especially if it is something who doesn't know you specifically? By which authority do they judge you without even knowing you? And I'm not saying Trump should be defended or attacked or anything. You are not Trump, and you are not a politician being attacked in the media. So even if you support a politician that I may not like, I don't see myself as being allowed to judge you solely based on your political views. You may be somebody great I might exchange with, despite the fact we may have some political disagreements. Therefore, you can challenge their authority instead of remaining frozen in your brain. You can challenge the authority they presume having over you by commenting on their behavior. Oh, right now you are elevating yourself as a political expert. Can you help me clarify by which authority do you claim to be a political expert? Who named you that? How can you judge politics just by your own name? How can you do that? And on the second one, it takes two to tango. This expression does not exist in my home language, but I get the point of what it means. I would challenge that more with the specifics. Instead, same thing. Instead of arguing on very simple, basic, no, it's not true because blah, blah, blah. Question the validity of their statement. How am I involved in this specifically? From when I looked it up, it takes two to tango means I am also responsible in the conflict, not just you. Okay, fine. I may be responsible. Can you just clarify how specifically? Again, specific questions beginning by how. How? Clarify for me, please. How am I involved in this specifically? You say I am involved in this. How am I? How am I involved in something I thought I had no link with? Maybe I do, but just clarify that. Even if you are, even if in the end, yes, you may also be responsible in the conflict at hand, at least you challenging in that way using specific questions puts you in the authority seat and gets them on the defensive seat. Instead of being the attacker, now they become the defender. And anyone who remains in the defender position for too long is more at risk of losing that interaction, even more if it is in front of an audience. If you get too much in the defender seat, trying to prove your point and get back at the surface, whereas they have been droning you down in the ocean of stupidity, then you may have, the person may have less and less control over your mind in that conversation. Then on the reverse, if we want to play some more trickery with those patterns, I said the first statement provided by Peter Duke was better reframed with a meta-frame technique. But on the reverse, if we use this time the specifics with the Donald Trump means you're racist, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. How do you define racism, for example? Because maybe there is some evidence. I'm not saying there is no evidence about this. I'm saying that the definition of racism itself might bring some nuance to your claim that I am a racist because I support Trump or whatever. Maybe there is some nuance about my whole identity as being a racist only because I believe in this or that politician. Maybe there is some more nuance in my thinking. So before trying to counter-argue that no, Trump also did this and did that, like anybody does these days on X and they all complain every day, you may just say, fine, can you help me clarifying please for a moment, how do you define racism? And from there, same thing, you get into the seat of the person asking the questions, of the person who is in authority, not in the defender seat, where your brain might freeze more easily, like it happened for Peter Duke. Sorry to name you as an example again, but because you mentioned that, I keep referring to you. And on the second one, it takes two to tango. Okay, on the meta frame this time, instead of the specifics, we might ask, by which standard can you judge who's dancing tango and who is not? Even if it is a metaphor, I get the point, it is not a literal explanation of what's happening between you and me, it is metaphoric. But in that case, entering into their metaphoric world, if they use the metaphor to attack you, then perfect. Ask them to clarify what their metaphor is made of or where their metaphor comes from. By which absolute standard of morality, of truth, or anything you want, by which absolute law of nature do you judge who's dancing tango and who is not? I know this might be some gibberish and nothing really of substance in a debate or in a conversation. At least it is maintaining the flow of the conversation. When you have those language abilities in the back pocket, it keeps the conversation flowing. If you remain frozen, then the conversation is over and you have lost anyway. At least as long as you're saying something, you're making them reveal more information about how do they use logic in their own head, which might not be valid at all. At least you make them elaborate more on how did they define initially what they should think of you. With that in mind, you can reframe their statements much more easily and get to the core of the argument, because many times when they attack you or complain about something related to you, they don't even complain about you directly, they complain about something else that happened in their life that in many cases is not even related to you directly. And as a reminder, if you want to figure out the best techniques from the magical linguistics model, you have the book also with all of those patterns contained and many examples of conversations using those techniques down below. And you have a free document that you can download right away and start using those patterns in your conversations and heated exchanges whenever you have them. It is called the 7 language patterns to hold the frame in any interaction. I have centered that in many examples around dating or around situations where you as a man talk with a woman who might be quite aggressive, because it is something that happened a lot to the students I was helping those last few weeks. Therefore, how can you defend yourself? And once you have understood the principles, you can apply them to any conversation. So whatever the topic is, those linguistic twists work in every language, they work for everyone, and you can always develop the ability to maintain your brain in activity even when somebody is attacking you directly with a very violent, insulting attack. And that is all for today. I have enjoyed a lot having you here. Thanks for the conversations. Thanks for all the tweaks, all the ideas you bring to this channel and all the thoughts you may have about it. And I will see you soon in the next video. Thank you.